we're kicking off. So thanks everyone for joining in to another Expert Talks Online. I think for those of you in Australia that are going through the lockdown at the moment, it's always good to create an excuse to bring communities together, to do some thought sharing, to just to create some engagement. So thanks for being a part of that. We've got Karim here with us from Cascade. We'll dive into a little bit more about who he is and just why he's the right guy to be talking about strategy with us. I'm Matt. I'm here from Equal Experts. So before we get into all the content, Karim, do you want to tell us a little bit about you?
Of course. So I'm the COO at Cascade. Cascade is a strategy acceleration and execution platform where we have a software for B2B businesses to implement, plan, and execute and track everything around the strategy and help teams around them to execute the strategy in the most effective way. I'm French Lebanese. I lived in 7 countries and I speak 6 languages. So anyone, you can try and see which languages you think I would know. But I lived in France and Lebanon most of my life, and I lived also in the US. This is where I worked for Expedia, and that was my biggest long journey outside of Lebanon and France. I lived also in Spain, in Germany, in the UK, and I came to Sydney with a company called Safety Culture 3 years ago, and I've been in software strategy and product since I started after my first 3 years of career in management consulting and strategy. So altogether, you would know maybe a bit more about how much I'm passionate about strategy and innovation. I have a degree in engineering, software engineering and energy. But then since I left university, I started working on strategy, whether it is in consulting and then in product and software until today. That's
quite a few stops on that journey. So I guess something that I'd like to know then, across all of those different places and those different experiences, how have you seen strategy differ, or the approach to strategy, and how have you taken all of those different moments in your life and now bring them together to do what you're doing with Cascade?
That's a very interesting question. I think culture depends on the culture, but the culture of the business itself. And I feel that I was only exposed to global organizations that fostered and accepted and shaped their culture around this multi-background, the culture, the diversity, and the many backgrounds and many diversity of thought there. So I think I always experienced this global company, and all global company have a lot of things in common. Otherwise, they wouldn't have become global, which is, I think, putting people first, focusing on retaining these talents and developing and getting all their ideas from the bottom up and help with the innovation from that perspective.
So we've just said the key word there, innovation. What comes first in your experience, strategy or innovation? And how do those two things come together?
All right. Okay. So I think everything needs a strategy, whether you are having a wedding, whether you're going to have just like a starting workout or starting a diet, everything needs a strategy. Innovation is this concept of bringing a new idea to life. And the strategy is to make you get there. Now, innovation is a very controversial kind of question or a definition, and we can directly start talking about it. But for me, innovation has 2 types. The first one is disruptive innovation, and the second one, which is sustaining innovation. And I think if you hear a lot about innovation, you must have heard much more about disruptive innovation than sustaining innovation. And the big difference between them is disruptive innovation is when you are upsetting the system, upsetting the existing structure, and really disrupting the way it was done. So you think about Amazon replacing bookstores. You think about Netflix replacing Blockbuster and DVDs. Now, sustaining innovation is just improving the way something has been done. And that's where you can think about, for example, Model T with Ford, which is improving and scaling the production of cars in some ways. Now, strategy is, again, the execution of any idea, whether it is innovating or just a specific goal. Strategy is just to take you from point A to point B and defining your entire plan to get from point A to point B.
Yeah, okay. So when an organization is sort of embarking on that innovation experience, that innovation journey, really there's sort of that key moment, which is that disruption. And then it's about how quick they can get their gears aligned to then sustain that innovation. Do they sort of come hand in hand like that? Is that sort of how you see it?
Yeah, I think I would say that innovation doesn't grow on trees or doesn't fall from the sky. It is about more than just researching or thinking or planning. It's more than just beautiful stories and PowerPoint and very complex Excel files in some companies. It's actually about the execution. And there are 4 pillars that I'm going to call the big 4 here that will make you actually innovate and execute your strategy the best way. I know that there are big 4s, but these are the big 4 for execution of a strategy. And let's talk them. Let's take a moment to talk about them. I think the first one is the idea. The second one is the team. The third one is the execution. And the fourth one is the timing. And I think you need these 4 elements, the big 4, at the same time to make an innovation happen. You cannot just come with an idea. You cannot just have the best team. You cannot just execute something. You cannot just arrive with the best timing. You need to have them all at the same time.
Yeah, okay. It's funny. I think a lot of people sort of look at innovation and they go, someone came up with a great idea and that it was because they had the right idea. They're so lucky and that's why it was a success. Really what you're saying is the right idea is only the right idea at the right time. And that timing is dictated by the things, the environments and the tools you had around you to sort of empower that idea. Is that sort of why these 2 things are so intertwined, strategy and innovation?
Absolutely. I think a lot of big companies have proved that it's not about being first, it's about being best. And I think you can come with the first idea, but if you didn't execute it well, and if you did not use the right elements around you and your environment in the best way and take advantage of everything you have around it, you could not actually be the best in what you have delivered. So I think the idea itself, it's great, but if you did not execute it, as you said, at the right time, with the right strategy and the right tools, you cannot succeed, period.
And I guess that leads me to more of a personal approach with those teams. In your own roles and in the success that you've seen in terms of growing those product-led sort of campaigns and things like that, how is innovation nurtured within the individuals within those teams? What steps can an organization or a team leader or a coach take to actually encourage and empower innovation within the people around them?
Yeah, that's a very good point, a very good question. I think for me, you have to build an idea generation culture. So you have to kind of like push everyone to drive innovation within your business. The best ideas doesn't always sit in the boardroom with 3 white men sitting and deciding what the company should look like, right? And I think ideas can come from anyone at any level in the business. But to make actually these ideas come in, you have to enable this culture of transparency, communication, and visibility. The leadership team should come with the vision and inspiration and giving the overall direction and enable this transparency and communication culture so everyone can come with these great ideas. Now, reality is that the more ideas you have, the better, because out of 100 ideas, you may end up with 99 that are okay or actually shit, and then 1 that is great. Now you have actually a bigger pool of ideas, and now you have a better understanding of what is the best idea or what is the best mix of ideas. And now you put your teams into execution, and then now you decide the rhythm of this execution. And at the end, as we said, the timing is extremely important. So the faster you execute, the faster you go to market and adapt and evolve over time, the better results you will get.
Right. Well, on the topic of speed, I think because me and you know each other and we're used to sort of having these rapid fire conversations, I think it's really important we sort of stop, pause, and do a little bit of a recap on what we've covered so far. I mean, even the journey that you went on yourself that sort of gave you that wider perspective to be aware of when companies were sort of going down these journeys and how to like look for those pitfalls and things like that. But then also, if you want to just recap on what those big 4 concepts were, I think that's a really important take-home lesson for everyone here before we sort of go into the next part, which is, you know, really diving into how these 2 concepts are intertwined.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will have you accountable for me to summarize from time to time, because I can speak for ages and I forget sometimes what I have ever said. So, okay, the big 4s are the idea, the team, the execution, and the timing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I guess if we're now looking at it from an external perspective at some organizations, what's some strategies or some organizations that you sort of have examples of, or that you could think when you start to say, okay, this company got it right, or this company got it wrong? Like, do you have any sort of strategies or examples of companies that you'd like to sort of dive into a little bit?
Yeah, of course. I mean, like the most innovative companies are all available online, and I think you can look at them. And it's interesting because out of the maybe top 50, most of them are in tech, and followed recently in 2021 by healthcare. And obviously, the reason for healthcare, which is the acceleration in kind of building and creating and rolling out or distributing vaccines. So out of the top 10, I think for 2021, you had the GAFA, you had like the Tesla of the world, but you also had Pfizer. And Pfizer has proved how fast they can go and how much they were able to change from this process of building a vaccine. And the process of research to developing to producing was shrinking from 10 years to 1 year. And actually, it's very, very good, because you would see the 5 leaders of vaccines in the top 50 today. And that gave them actually kind of an opportunity to return. So when you look at these 5 healthcare providers and all of the tech companies or all the innovative companies on that list, they all showed what I call fast adaptability. They were able to fastly adapt and really understand what is changing around them in the market and how they can accelerate the idea that they were building and push it to market as soon as possible. And to do this, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, when you say adapting and changing, is that to the level of their vision, or is it about how they can adapt the way they answer that vision? Like, do those two things relate?
Yeah, I think for me, every business needs to sit down and think about their purpose and vision, and just answer this question: what type of business you want to be? Where do you want to be as a business? What do you want your brand to be perceived for? Maybe it is just a purpose around climate change. Maybe it's about changing the world of like cancer, curing cancer. Whatever the vision or the purpose is for your business is something that you need to lead all your teams with and make them realize that that is actually the direction that you're taking. Now, when you answer this question, you have other big 4 or other 4 elements that you need to look at to make sure that you are driving towards this vision. The first one is your customer. Without customers, you have no business. You have to be remaining relevant all the time and follow them where they are. You have to understand how is the competition dealing with your customer. And it's not always, again, about being first to the customer, but also about being best and the best solution for the customer. So the first one that will help you drive the vision is your customer. The second one is your people. Do you have the people that can drive this vision? Can your people in your teams with their skills be able to deliver on this vision that you have in mind? And I think it is very interesting when you look at that, because there is a study that says by 2025, over 50% of the workforce will need to be retrained. So that's something you want to think about as a business. Do I have the right people in my teams? But also, do I have the training and the resources and the tools to help them get to this next level in terms of skills? I think the third one is the place or the workplace. Obviously, it can be an office, it can be remote, it could be hybrid, but have you thought about the environment where your teams are working to deliver the experience for your customer? And then the last one, which is, I think, the most important one after people, is, do you have the tools and systems in place that can help you accelerate? Which is very funny, because I think there was, again, another study that said that in 2021, BCG surveyed thousands of organizations, and 75% of these organizations said that innovation is one of their top priority. But then in that same analysis, they realized that only 20% of these companies are actually able to innovate because they don't have the systems, they don't have the tools, they don't have the processes. So being willing to innovate and being ready to innovate is very different. And to conclude here, that being ready depends on 4 pillars. your customers, your place of work, your people, and your systems.
So you've got a couple of big fours.
Another big four here.
Okay, so Australia's now got 3 big fours. We got Karim's 8 and the banks. I think it's cool just on that sort of, we were sort of leading into the processes and the systems and the tools that are actually available and how they actually empower and enable this innovation. From your experience and from sort of taking those teams, through those scale periods or through those scale experiences where they've really had to look at a customer profile and then deliver something of value to that customer, what are key pillars in sort of maturing an innovation capability of a team? Like what's something that you would sort of look at a team and you go, okay, they're not in a position to innovate despite wanting to innovate. Like what things would you like to see as someone sort of overlooking and coming down?
I think the only one that I would respond to this is actually agility. Are you able to be agile enough? Are you accepting what agility means? And are you able to execute in an agile way? I think a lot of companies have been talking about agility recently, but when you talk to them about what does that mean to them, they still talk to you about years of roadmap. They still talk to you about 5 years of migration. They sometimes tell you that in the next 10 years, this is how I'm going to roll out something. And I can just say that this is not anymore okay, because in the last year and a half, we realized that people are moving very fast. When you look at these tech companies and how they are evolving and how they are capturing market share outside of their core business, you realize that they are moving very, very fast. Obviously, Facebook, when you look at Facebook and you think about them, you think about WhatsApp, you think about Instagram and Facebook, this company has been now investing in every single technology available in the world. They are in VR, they are in every single example, data analysis, predictive, even like some areas of health and medical systems. So
they're even in digital currencies now, aren't they?
Yeah, the Libra. So they are everywhere and they are moving very fast. And I think that is the biggest question that you want to ask yourself is, are you agile enough? Define agility, and let's see if you can execute on it. And try to build plans that are shorter than 5 years or 3 years.
So when you say moving fast, is moving fast the cadence of how quickly you can sort of create a hypothesis, test a hypothesis, and learn from a hypothesis, and then have an evolved hypothesis after that? Is that sort of what that speed is? Is it the sort of the revolutions that your company can actually take value from as they go?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg was always asking his team to break things fast so they can fix them fast. And I think it is all about learning and failing and adapting as you go. So go with iteration and don't build a master plan that takes you 6 to 8 months. Try to execute shorter and smaller pieces and learn from them. It is totally okay to have mistakes and actually learn from them. It is better to learn from these mistakes than actually push them way further in time.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I guess maybe to soften the depth of the content at the moment, I want to sort of circle back because we didn't get the chance to go into it when you introduced yourself. And I think it's an important factor in what sort of creates credibility in where you're coming from. And it's, what is it in your journey that sort of made strategy so important to you? And then how is that influence in your life? Like, so obviously from anyone looking in, they can see that you've been highly successful in the teams that you've worked with and the products that you've been engaged with. So what is it about strategy that motivated you? And then how sort of can you impart that sort of knowledge on the attendees so that they could sort of use their motivators in the same way?
Yeah, I guess I'm going to say that I started my career in strategy and it was the theory, the slides, and the Excel files. And I realized very quickly that I am getting very frustrated by this approach of doing things, which is planning, building slides, and thinking that strategy sits on PowerPoint. And I think as soon as I understood that this is not how we should be executing strategy, I wanted to go on the opposite side of the spectrum and say, let's understand where we're going, but let's actually define very quickly how to get there. And let's actually start executing. And I think this is the biggest part of the equation that is sometimes missing in a lot of businesses, is the execution of a strategy. How do I execute my strategy? Builds always like this fear or of like doing it because you still want to master this plan and make it perfect and better before you communicate it to the team. What is this master plan? By the time you finish it, someone else has done it. And I think this is where I learned over time that the best way to approach businesses is to start executing, always with the end in mind. Let's make a plan. Let's think about where we want to be, but let's actually break it down into smaller pieces and start executing on them.
And on a software deployment level, is that replicated, do you see now, in the way that engineers actually are working on their solutions? That same approach of let's get things moving, let's make them reliable, let's automate where possible so that we can get a higher frequency of outcomes and take value. Like it must be interesting. So as you said, your own personal journey has gone from being on one side of that spectrum and wanting to sort of shift that innovation concept across. And are you seeing that now replicated in those product teams, in those engineering teams? And do you think that was led from the engineers up, or do you think that someone, how do you think those sort of two things came together?
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously I worked in software companies, big organization and small organizations. And I think I have seen an increase in the number of releases, and it's all based on how you develop this culture of, again, agile and sprints. I was talking to a large organization in Australia recently that told me that they have moved to agile and sprints. And I asked, how long is your sprint? And I was expecting just like a week or two. And that person said that they have a sprint of 6 months. And I was like, okay, this is very long for a sprint. What do you do in a sprint? And I think at the end, I understood that this is almost like a big release, and it is still waterfall, but just changing the names doesn't make it agile. And in my current company, obviously, we are software B2B SaaS, but what we do is driving every second week new releases to the customer and always be testing about what is working. And beyond just like being fast to release something, you have to experiment. So you have to put your customers into 2 audiences or 3 audiences and start doing A/B testing. And you learn from your users using the platform every day, what is the better experience, so you can move with the winner test after a couple of weeks, or when you reach significance in the way you are exposing this information. So it's almost like you can think about it as a waste in time of building sometimes twice the same concept, but with 2 different approaches or 2 different visuals or 2 different flows or 2 different user journeys. But at the same time, you're actually making sure that you get much more adoption from the customer. And I think this is not a new thing or just for software. A lot of companies have been doing it in their industries. You think of IKEA and how they have been always doing test and learn about how they package and how they put things in their store. Test and learn has been always here, and it comes with the speed, it comes with analyzing, it comes with understanding the patterns that your customer is developing based on what you show them and based on what they need.
And where do you put that test and learn in a hierarchy? So if I was to, and it might be speaking out of my depth in terms of what the dashboards and things for Cascade look like, but where would the test and learn environment or metric or measurement, like how would those things sort of be, like if you're looking at a really innovative, a mature innovation company, how are they picking those things up, and what are those key attributes that you would recommend as best practices?
Again, I think let's start with moving away from Excel files. This is, I think, the first step for a lot of organizations. It's fascinating when you talk to Fortune 500 or like very, very large organizations in the world, and how many of them tell you that they are still using Excel files to solve a lot of problems. And I think that is the first piece, is actually coming with your digital transformation strategy, is what do you have in place, and does any of this systems that you have still work? Let's start from scratch and think about your business as of today. What would you build your business on if you have the choice of doing it now from scratch? Start from zero, because your 80 systems are not anymore the 2021 systems. And I think it is okay to accept that, and then try to sometimes build a new strategy around digital transformation, and maybe avoid these long migrations of 5 and 10 years. So that's actually the first level of maturity. What do I have in terms of systems, and what can stay and what should go away? And then when you have a better system, you can start pushing faster And then when you go to pushing faster, then you can go to the experimentation, and then you can do the test and learn. So I would say that test and learn is maybe the third part of the maturity curve of this digital transformation.
Yeah, okay, that's really, I guess, I think a lot of people would probably push the test and learn further forward, but if they haven't spent the time to understand the capabilities or the constraints of their as is, I find that that's such a pivotal thing that sometimes gets overlooked, because people are always looking, if I'm investing in innovation, so I'm going to look to tomorrow. But how can you look to tomorrow if you're not aware of what your current system is restricting you from doing? I think that it's a really good point that you said, that there's those key steps that have to happen to actually make that test and learn productive activity.
Yeah, I guess understand your business, understand your capabilities, whether it is tools or people, and then take it from there and assess your business, your purpose, your goals within the existing environment. Don't think that you are the only company that you're trying to do innovate, and try to accept that everyone else is trying to do the same thing. But the winner will be the fastest to deliver what you are doing. I feel like every day, more and more, that innovation is now less and less possible, because there are so many things that have been kind of like democratized in terms of ideas. And now it's all about the execution. Electric vehicle, clean energies, data mining, VR, AR, metaverse, all of these things are now kind of like dictating what the next 20 years maybe could look like. But now it's all about the execution within your industry, within your sector, of how do you take advantage of these big technologies that are now available and make them a reality for your customer.
And on that point of, you sort of were saying that the ability or the clean air to innovate seems like it's getting thinner. But then how do you compare that to, so you've sort of mentioned it's not about being first, it's about being best. And then there's those sort of adoption curves when innovation happens, like you mentioned VR and things like that. Historically, you sort of have that period where there's the early adopters, right? And then so the first mover has that opportunity to take a big part of that curve. And then you've got sort of the followers that come along. How have you sort of seen that, I guess, modern practices have changed the way that those curves have sort of been reflecting in real world markets?
Yeah, so it's called the shark fin effect. And it's because it looks like a shark at the start with like the big teeth. And you can look it online. It's I think built by Accenture, and it speaks about this disruptive innovation, right? So it speaks about test and learn very fast when you find something that you want to see if your market has the appetite for, and it leaves to the rest of the kind of the market a very thin time to adapt it and build the same thing. So it is called the fin effect, compared to what we had as the bell curve of technology adoption that was built in the 60s or 70s, maybe 70s, I can't remember now. But yeah, it shows how very little companies are able to do this test and learn very, very quickly, and then they become the shark. So the sharks are the Amazon of the world, the Siemens of the world, the Walmart of the world. And when you look at actually, maybe that's what you were looking for, is kind of how are they able to do that? I think it comes down to three big pillars. The first one is kind of this customer obsession. So when you look at the Amazon business, or like the business model or the system, it's all about the customer experience. It's all about making sure that the customer is happy and getting this feedback loop as early as possible to understand what they need to be changing to get to the next level. So the customer obsession and understanding this customer feedback, it sounds very obvious, but I don't think a lot of companies do it well. The second one is building alignment towards this vision and aligning your teams on the ground and bringing them to the conversation that is happening at leadership team level, and really take advantage or take pride of their ideas and feed them into the overall strategy. And I think the last one is being data driven. Being data driven is fancy. It sounds easy, but if you don't have the systems to be able to capture data every single day and have this remote visibility on answering this question every time, you cannot execute and succeed. You have to be able to answer this question at any time. Did your team do their best today? And I think this question is one of the hardest questions to answer when you are in a leadership team position, because you don't know if your teams did their best today. If they did it best today in front of the customer in a retail store, if it is in a manufacturing area, if it's in any other industry, they don't know if their teams did their best today. And without this remote visibility on what happens on the ground, you cannot tweak your strategy. So data is important, but the instant access to data is even more important.
It's funny, you've got, in a world where, you know, some of the things that that innovation is actually creating, you know, the deep tech and some of the, you know, things that would be previously just inconceivable solutions that people are coming up with. Something as simple as your ability to monitor the outcomes or the values being created as you innovate. Something that simple is like a linchpin to the success of that innovation. You could, like, in technology, it's interesting that you can go so far and have such, you know, incredible outcomes, but without having these really clear and as you said, seem simple frameworks in place, it's very hard to stay on the right trajectory and the right path. I think it's I know that this event was pushed out to a lot of startup communities, and I think it's something really important for, you know, a lot of the founders that would probably be watching or listening at the moment, to sort of highlight that, you know, maybe that's where startups are getting it right. They're not shackled to traditional ways of doing things, that they can look at the data, they can be customer, you know, obsessed. And is that, like, I guess in your experiences, have you got sort of any key takeaways for them on how they should remain in check on those things? Like, they've had that opportunity to come in with that advantage. How do they stay on that path?
So I think, this is a very, very good point here, because on the opposite side, because we've been talking about large organizations who have migrations of 5 and 10 years, they are actually almost the incumbent of themselves, and the new small players will come and disrupt them. Now, on the opposite side, so let me just complete my first idea, which is, okay, these large organizations are here for ages. They have a lot of money, they have a lot of customers, but they have the problem of the digital transformation, right? On the other side, you got the small companies, new players. They have the right tools, they have the best talent, but they actually have less market share. They don't have a lot of customers. They don't have a lot of revenue. And I think for this audience, the biggest and most important thing beyond just the systems is actually putting a strategy and focus on one thing. There is a book called The One Thing that actually explains how focusing on one thing helps companies succeed. And it actually helped so many other companies that became giants, that the Uber of the world, the Airbnb of the world, the Amazon of the world, the Microsoft of the world, the Amazon, if I didn't count it yet, all of them had one thing. And I think what startups make a mistake with is being always trying to do 5, 10 things at the same time. I recommend for startups, as soon as you find your product market fit, to really focus on it and make it every day better through execution of your strategy and through actually data and experimentation, but really with one big focus. If you think even about like LinkedIn, for example, and when they were trying back in 2009 to find their biggest opportunity, they always knew that they want to be the talent solution. But what they have executed towards that was actually digital marketing solutions. They also looked at the premium subscriptions of people to get you more access to the network. So they defined a very focused strategy to get to where they are today. And whether you are a small company actually, or a mid company or a large company, focus is key. Without focus, you cannot do anything.
So what's Cascade's focus right now? What's if you're going to eat your breakfast, what would you be saying that is for Cascade at the moment?
Absolutely. So Cascade is a scale-up company. We moved from 30 people at the start of the year to 65 people today, and we are scaling up our systems. We are evolving our platform every day, but we actually are and have been the first on G2 Crowd for strategy execution. And I think there is a huge opportunity here because a lot of companies want to execute the strategies, but they don't have the tools to help them do that. And today you have two kind of options that you have in front of you. The first one, which is productivity tools, so task focused and project management focused. And the problem with these tools is that they are focusing on productivity, and productivity is not a good concept. Productivity is just output versus input. So it's about working harder, not working smarter. And on the opposite side, you have these tools that are for strategic planning, which gets you stuck in plans for ages and you never execute. Now, in the middle comes Cascade, which is helping you focus on the right things, but actually help you work smarter rather than just doing a lot of work every day and focus on how many tasks you have achieved today. Let's focus on this picture and the big picture and end in mind, and try to break it down into small deliverables, milestones, and projects.
It's ironic that I guess Equal Experts being an innovation software sort of and a big part of us is build the right thing the right way, and exactly in the words that you just said for Cascade. And I think it marries the concept of strategy and innovation coming together, building the right thing the right way, but also having the tools in place to sort of empower and make it work in an effective manner. I think now is probably, you know, I think a pretty heavy amount of content that we've gone through. I definitely want to have a 2-minute recap on Karim's double big four and little three.
I like that.
I think that's there's definitely some value in people if they're going to take away something there. If we wanted to, yeah, if you just recap on the big four, and then I think we'll dive into some questions and we'll go from there.
Sure. So we talked about the big four, which are the main pillars to help your innovation happen. Get the idea right. That's first. Then get the team to make this idea happen. Look at your execution, and then look at the timing. Go fast as soon as you are able to build a first plan. Just go and start executing. The second one that we talked about are actually 4 elements, but we were talking about I think the main things that will help you drive your execution to be the best execution, but also that drives actually building your vision into a reality and make it happen. And we spoke about your customer. Without your customer, you have no business. So you have to understand them every day and ask them every day. The second thing is your people. Are your people ready for the shift? Are your people not part of the great resignation that we've been talking about recently? Are your people ready to be engaged? Do they believe in your purpose and vision? The third one is your workplace, whether you are remote or in office or building this hybrid model. Did you look at the flexibility that you want to provide your teams, the mobility that they are asking for after COVID? And the last one is your systems and your tools. I think if I can summarize the last one, I would say technology is the business, it is the strategy. So how can you implement your digital transformation the fastest possible is the secret for this one. And I think at the end, we spoke about kind of the 3 things that make the giants or the sharks. And I think they are the customer obsession. It comes back always to this very simple concept and understanding this feedback loop and capturing the information as soon as possible. The second one is the alignment and the buy-in of your teams. So bringing your teams on the ground to the overall conversation of strategy and direction. And the last one is just be able to access data as soon as possible in an instant way and have this remote visibility on did your team do their best today? So
I think there's some a couple of $1 million savings if people can follow those key pointers just there. Because I know, and it's something we didn't dive too much into, but you know, the things we're discussing, although at this level, you know, quite holistic, getting these wrong can have significant costs and backlash for organizations, right? Like everyone is aware of the example of Kodak, a company that had that first mover, they were the shark, and then they just did not do these things effectively. And in fact, someone was sitting in the boardroom and came up with the idea of a digital camera, but they thought that was preposterous because how would they possibly sell their film if someone made like and these sort of things. So it's, if you're someone listening and you're in a startup, you know, this could be the difference in how in your run rate on your bootstrap sort of capital that you've got to utilize. Or if there's someone coming in there and they're managing a team, this could be the difference in retaining that highly valuable team member that you have in your team, because they want to feel that sense of fulfillment. They want that intrinsic investment to being able to actually innovate and improve the things that they're delivering. So I think, yeah, the range of value that those key pointers could deliver for the audience, it's hugely valuable. And thanks for breaking that down for us, Karim. I'm going to jump across to the Q&A now and see what people have been asking us. All right. So are you ready for this, Karim? You're not going to...
Let's see.
Not going to get stumped? Given the short life cycle on continuous improvement models, how do you propose that a business establish strategy 3, 5, or even 10 years into the future, given how quickly you may be required to pivot?
How do you propose? I think what remains always constant is your vision and where you want to be. Everything else is open for questioning and changing over time. And I think you can take even the example of Uber and how they started very strong. Then they had a lot of instability given their leadership approach. Then they went even bigger afterwards with kind of like opening to Uber Eats. Then COVID hit and they moved all their engineering efforts and all their resources from Uber the Drive to Uber Eats in like a couple of weeks. And if you think about the strategy of Uber, and if you look at what CEO of Uber, Dara Khosrowshahi, was saying, you can understand very quickly that their overall strategy was actually to have Uber everywhere. But as soon as the COVID pandemic hit, they were able in 2 or 3 weeks to change their whole approach. As long as they were keeping revenue coming in, they were just willing to change from Uber to Uber Eats. And that's, I think, the agility that companies need to have to keep executing and to keep succeeding. They will always be this Uber that have transportation, delivery, inventing new ways of transporting people and goods. But their strategy every month is changing depending on the environment around them.
And would you say that their ability to do that so quickly, considering sort of external market factors, was a reward for their investment in sort of continuous delivery? The fact that they had systems and tools and teams that were already sort of geared in that mindset to be able to make those quick calculated adjustments, that the outcome and success of that was actually, related to that investment. Would you say that they're interlinked?
Absolutely. I mean, again, we have seen Giant evolving and adapting that did maybe not have the systems. Again, when we talk about healthcare, reducing 10 years into one is just an incredible achievement. And I don't know if all of them had the systems and tools, but they were also having what is extremely important is the urgency to market and the willingness to win. And I think the willingness to win comes always with also the reward, and that's the reward that they got. So I think sometimes it's just beyond the systems. It's about the willingness to change and willingness to drive a new culture that is faster than the one it was before. You
just got to want it more. Is that what you're saying?
Say it again?
You've just got to want it more.
Yeah, I mean, for startups is the hustle, right? And hustle is extremely important as long as you're focusing on one thing.
He's referred back to another lesson there. I like it. All right, next question. We'll go with Armin. Outside of technology products, what are some things that you can think? What are some of the things that you think? Oh, it's moving on me. Sorry, guys. Can be done to make public policy strategy development and creation less rigid and more agile? Is it the same approach?
I may not be able to answer this very well, but I get a very impressive example for us was actually Australia with COVID and how we were able to implement the barcode incredibly quickly and have it accessible to everyone in the city or everyone in the country. And I think this pandemic has almost like mandated to everyone to move faster, including government, including public organizations. And some of them have shown that they are able to.
Do you think in some cases, some have shown that they were very willing to and open to, and then in other cases that pushback, it's almost ironic. I think in Australia, especially for a long time, there was probably the ability to hide those inefficiencies. And because of the severity of something like COVID and the outcomes of that, that poor speed of movement, it's really highlighted that now. And do you think that that's going to be a trickle down effect for years to come? Do you think that once you've had that step change, that's there for life?
I think, you're absolutely right. And I think we're seeing it with many other things as well. Like I think cryptocurrency is another example where some organizations or some countries are accepting it faster, but this will prove that this works, and then everyone else will shift. I think we have seen it several times in the history, even with like things like PayPal replacing banks in many, many ways, even with social trading and opening trading to everyone rather than just the organizations that can only trade. So I think we have seen more and more of this happening, but I agree with you that the pandemic will be accelerating everything moving forward. Remote work is the same.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought a year and a half ago that it would be the norm to dial in with someone sitting on a beach up in Queensland because they're trying to avoid a lockdown.
Absolutely.
All right, next question. Can you recommend any systems for getting the right data? I hear a lot about actionable Agile. Is that something you think is worth investing in? And can you recommend any other products to replace the old Excel ways of working?
I can speak about data tools for like maybe 2 hours, but I think it all depends on the sector you're in and the industry you're working for. I guess like obviously there is visualization data, there's CDPs, there's testing platforms, there is conversion platforms. There are so many things. Reach out. I would love to answer you privately, but there are so many tools and so many areas of data to get your data visualized, understood, and captured in different ways. Definitely Excel.
That came from anonymous attendee, so you might be struggling to chase down who that was.
Reach out on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to answer.
Okay. From Dylan, what do you think makes a good environment for encouraging a culture of innovation?
I think leading by example. If you want people to be able to drive you, to give you the right ideas, you want to be able to communicate to them in a very transparent way. You want to build this trust. I think one of the funniest part about, for example, large organizations is that if you have a very good idea and you're in a large organization, that you're most likely to go and build a startup than actually going to pitch it to the company itself. And I think it all goes back to the incentive that the company gives you and the trust and really involving you in the vision of the business and also making you benefit of the outcome of this idea. If you are not getting an outcome from proposing something to a company, you are less likely to propose it.
So that's a hard truth for some of the big corporates out there, isn't it?
I know that there are so many kind of programs in large organizations to drive innovation, but what is your incentive for this innovation? Is it just a quick reward? Is it gamification, as some call it? Is it actually more shares in the business? Is it more money? What is your reward? Is it actually kind of giving the teams the ability to build a startup within the company? That could be a good idea. If you are bringing a good idea that is worth exploring, and you are almost the founder of this company within your large organization, then I'm sure that these people will not go out and then build their own startup. They will just form a small, almost incubator within the business.
So really what you're saying there, the pivotal thing is understanding the motivator, right? Understanding why it is that they're wanting to create this innovation or why it is they're wanting to embark on this innovation, whether that's internal or whether that's external, and understanding your customer. You've just got to really, intimately understand what drives them, right?
Yeah, I think there is the changing of the culture of accepting people to speak more often and express themselves and make sure that everyone is available to say things even when they are not the best ideas. The second one is understanding what are the motivation of people to have them actually speak. The third one is the incentive itself of what is my idea worth it.
Awesome. Dylan's come back and said that he loves that perspective. So you've hit the nail on the head with that one for Dylan. You've got a fan.
Amazing.
How do you encourage the democratization of innovation when SLT are reluctant to do so?
Can you repeat again, please?
How do you encourage the democratization of innovation when SLT are reluctant to do so?
Well, I think if you are working in a company where SLT is not enabling innovation, maybe you should change, or just go into this SLT team and explain them why the innovation system is broken. And I guess this could be a very good outcome. If the company enables this transparency, they would be appreciating your feedback on what is broken with their system around innovation, and they could be changing a lot of it. And then you would be maybe benefiting a lot from the outcome.
Yeah, awesome. I'm going to try and do some power hour questions. Now we've got 5 minutes to try and get through what we've got left. So you've got quick 30 to 45-second answers on the ones that I throw out. You ready?
Let's go.
Are we saying business or companies should not have long-term strategy roadmaps like 3 or 5 year terms?
I don't believe in the concept of very, very long-term roadmaps. I believe in setting goals that go beyond your first quarter or your year. It's absolutely important to have goals for the business. You cannot build a strategy and set it in stone for 5 years. You can have horizons, you can have ideas, but you have to explore one by one and evolve them over time and try to learn and adapt rather than just set in stone the strategy. The goal does not change. The strategy is absolutely okay to change. And that's why you need to execute it to be able to know if it's working or not.
Just snuck in before the bell.
Exactly.
If I have a good idea, a great team, and a dedicated execution, how do I know it's the right time to get that idea to the market? How do I tackle timing?
By taking it to the market and testing.
That was a short one.
I think that's the best I could do with this one. I guess it's a very important question. And I think timing is all about kind of like the readiness of the market and your readiness. Obviously, we speak in technology about MVPs. I believe that what you should deliver to the market is an AVP and not an MVP, not a minimum viable product, but an awesome viable product that actually kind of like capture the attention of people, but make them also satisfied of what you have delivered. And then you keep building blocks on top, not an MVP, but an AVP.
We've got 2 big 4s, a little 3, and an AVP. I'm trying to keep tabs of the
You're always trying to get rid of my focus one, but this is the most important.
In an organization that needs to innovate but is not currently, how do you execute a strategy when the C-suite is focused only on making it to end of quarter?
I think what is worth it actually with this company is to try to ask the leadership team about their vision and the direction. I'm sure that they definitely have something in mind, but maybe here the challenge is communication. And I think transparency and communication are extremely important to drive people buy-in and adoption and engagement. So maybe by expressing how you guys don't see the strategy or don't see the vision of the business will surface this need for the leadership team to come and speak more often about it and drive this transparency around where are we heading to? Because sometimes leadership don't think or don't realize that their teams are not aware of the strategy. And it's just a communication matter.
Yeah. Comes down to good communication on so many occasions, right? Like it's a crux for personal life and private and in corporate life. If you communicate well, you sort of stay on the right path more often than not.
Absolutely.
All right. Can you provide an example of a long-term strategy on product strategy or strategy in general? Sorry, I think it moved on me. Yeah, it moved on me. Sorry. Can you provide an example of a long-term strategy that suits 2-week continuous improvement sprints?
I think Netflix has an incredible model that's called the DHM model. That is incredibly that explains how you can develop actually agility within a long-term strategy. I can share with you the article if you reach out on LinkedIn. It explains very, very well the strategy of Netflix from the time they started to today and how they approach it. The other strategy I would recommend is what Salesforce does. Since 1999, they have been applying almost the same approach, which is what they call V2MOM, and they are really worth reading.
All right, nice. We're down to the last minute, and I'm hoping that it doesn't move. It keeps moving the order of the questions while I'm reading, so that's what makes me seem like I don't know what I'm saying. Are there any books or content you would recommend on product strategy or strategy in general?
I think the one thing is extremely important as a book, but the other book that I would say I started reading and I'm really impressed is called Think in Systems by Zoe McKay. And it is interesting because it speaks about the art of strategic planning, effective problem solving, and lasting results. And it's really helps you find long-term solution to your problems, but also start identifying how you build in systems a solution that aligns very well also with one of the bestseller books in the world, which is the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Covey. And that speaks about begin with end in mind and be proactive. So these are 3 books that are a good mix to build the best strategies.
All right. Does Cascade have a team in New Zealand?
We are a global team with a lot of remote. So we are 50% remote right now. And we've got teams in Greece, in Croatia, in the US, in Argentina, in Australia, in the UK, in Germany. I can keep going. So our software is available online for any country. And we are present in maybe like 10 to 12 countries right now.
But do you have anyone on the ground in New Zealand?
If we have the best talents in New Zealand, I would never say no.
It's awesome. By what frequency can we change the vision?
I don't think
by what time frequency, sorry.
But I don't think the vision should change unless there are a lot of extremely important things happening in your world. I would say Blockbuster should have changed their vision as soon as they understood that this is not the right direction to evolve access to videos. I would say that the vision of, I don't know, maybe hotels could have changed a bit more when Airbnb came and disrupted. But unless there is a big disruption happening, I don't think the vision should change. And even when the disruption should happen, actually, the vision must just be adaptable or like tweaked a bit, but not really changed.
Do you think that almost aligns with the concept of the jobs to be done thought, right? Like the vision shouldn't be how you're doing it. The vision is what you're trying to achieve through all these other practices. So those other things can change as long as you're still trying to achieve a certain thing for a certain audience. Is that why that's the case?
The biggest challenge when it comes to definitions is the word strategy. People think of strategy as vision or goal, which is not accurate. I think vision and goal can be the same thing if your goal is very big and not achievable in the short term. But strategy is what you do every day, is your business as usual, is your execution. And this is totally okay to tweak and change and evolve every week and every day, and sometimes just instantly when you feel that there's a problem.
All right, last one. Given you have lived and worked in different countries, what observations do you have on the innovation culture of corporations in Australia versus other countries, e.g. the US?
I guess I learned over time not to generalize. And I think in the US, you have several companies that are evolving and extremely fast, but you also have companies that are not evolving at all and are stuck in the ways of things that are very traditional. And I think, again, the companies that are evolving fast are the ones that are becoming global very quickly, because we live in a global economy and it's so easy to be global. It is very easy to be global today if you are delivering the right offer and the right experience. Obviously, technology enables you to do it faster and better. And if you are satisfied with one market only, good for you. But I think the opportunity of reaching to the 7-8 billion, I don't know how many we are right now anymore, but if you are able to reach the global audience and have this addressable market as big as possible, this is a massive opportunity for your business. I believe that in Australia, I have seen both sides, the fast and the slow or the traditional. And I think even when I look at New South Wales Transportation and how incredible this organization is when it comes to digitization, acceleration of strategies, I cannot have one statement on Australia as a market.
All right, I think that will wrap us up. We managed to squeeze a lot of Karim's brain into 1 hour there, and I'm extremely grateful, and I think everyone that attended is extremely grateful for your time, Karim. Thank you for sharing all of that with us.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to come again whenever it is an opportunity. I know that I speak sometimes super fast, but also I think I sleep very early at like 8:39 every night, and I wake up very early. So it's the last like hours of my day. And I'm hoping that we help with a lot of insights and some structured ideas to take away and start executing in your business. And if you need any more information about Cascade or any things that is related to the questions you asked and we weren't able to answer, please reach out on LinkedIn.
Awesome. All right. Well, yeah, once again, thank you everyone that attended, and any further information that you guys want from what was discussed today, feel free to reach out to us either directly through to Karim, or you can reach out and we'll pass it through the Equal Experts Australia and New Zealand page. Thanks everyone for joining.